Previously on the recap sequence.
Welcome to the recap sequence. We're back. We're back in the basement.
Yeah, we are.
It's been a while.
Mother Nature threw us a massive snowball the other day,
Yeah.
last week when we were supposed to record with Brent. We got about halfway down the road and said, no, we're not doing this,
Yeah.
which I will say turned out to be a good thing, because I had a friend who was actually on campus, and he said trying to get down that hill was just ridiculous. Like, people were all over the place.
Yeah, it was. We should be used to this snow thing happening, but this was particularly gross. And I was with you. It was like, okay, do we struggle to get up?
I like me talking
Street?
to Brent. I like getting together and doing
You
that.
bet,
But
you bet, yeah.
you know,
but I don't want to
no
die,
offense, Brent.
on the way to doing it, so we can't do it again. Yeah. Oh, and hey, speaking of Brent, hey, how are you, man?
Doing good, guys. Doing good.
Awesome.
Our OB is back with us.
That's right. Yeah. So we thought we talked about this too in the car in the snow as we were skating around. That you are definitely the OB of the show, and we were just kind of remarking how your initials are B and O, but we can't call you the BO. We're
That just has the wrong context.
Yeah. So you're always going to be O'Hara, Brent, so that we can refer to you for. And it's much
good enough. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, much shorter than Marvel Senior Cinema.
Our Marvel Senior
got it.
Cinematic
You
Movie
this.
Correspondent, of course, Mr. Brent O'Hara. And it's fun doing these video things as well, because I never know. Brent kind of changes up the background a bit, and just so
Like it.
for context here, the Iron Man display on the top of your shelf behind you there, just epic, sir. You need like Christmas lights around it. Yes, exactly. You
That's
need the
it.
Christmas lights around it, because it's so cool.
Yeah, and I sometime we got to get down to Moncton to play that arcade game.
Yeah,
that looks
that's
pretty badass.
that's in the process. We'll talk about that later on with
Sure.
Brent, because we have plans for 2024. But Brent, I've got to ask you. I mean, we're here to talk about the Marvels. We've all seen it now. But there's something that's been sort of bugging me in the back of my mind that I've been really curious about getting your take on this, and whether you agree with it or not. But do you buy into this whole MCU fatigue that people are talking about, that the media is making a deal about? Because the Marvels hasn't done very well at the box office. I attribute part of that to the strike, because you couldn't get your actors out there to talk about this project they're working on and hype it up and so forth. And they come up and say, well, it's MCU fatigue now. People are just worn out with everything that's on Disney Plus and in the theaters.
Well, it's an interesting thing to think about, because like you say, the media has glommed onto this idea that the super successful $1 billion per movie studio is suddenly having movies that aren't hitting that, and they're a little more normal.
Yeah.
but normal for Marvel is considered under certain contexts as being a failure, and they get the rail on them for it. So I think everything that we hear about MCU fatigue has to be taken with some context.
Yeah.
You think about, okay, where's this coming from? And we noted on our last conversation how the buildup to the opening of the movie was full of this crazy media phenomenon of negative press, and really trying to push the negatives towards it. But then it's so interesting now, since like every person that the week after, the second weekend, then all of the positive reviews come out.
Right.
Yeah.
And every person that I've spoken to really enjoyed the movie, and there's nothing but positivity. So isn't it interesting that beforehand in the ramp up, it was just this churn of negative push. So it sort of makes you question how much faith you put into what you hear about that sort of thing. But look, we had Bob Iger show up on a business show, and had some very interesting things to say, from a business perspective. And so he believes that there were some things that they did wrong, to keep the movie aligned with a super successful box office. And he wasn't shy about saying, the business people weren't keeping an eye on this close enough to keep it aligned with success. And he was bold enough to say, look, that he had to go and remind everybody of what their jobs were here. Their jobs were about entertaining people. And it's fine for messages, for positive messages to be part of the story, but he seemed to think like they kind of got derailed a little bit. That became more of the priority, and a lot of folks, that can be divisive. A lot of people don't like being preached to, or feel like the message is overpowering the story, and they've had a number of products.
So let me ask you guys this then, because going back to that MCU issue is, I know a lot of people, you're going into the Marvels, and we've got three characters who we're all familiar with, Monica Rambeau, Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel, but you had to see WandaVision to understand how Monica Rambeau got her powers. You had to watch Miss Marvel to understand how her character comes into this. And I think there was some disconnect there with people going into the movie not having seen some of that.
Well, and maybe that's true. But this is what the comics do all the time too, right? Like Stan always said, every comic could be someone's first, and you have to be able to welcome them into the story.
Yeah.
I don't think they did
I have nothing negative to say about the Marvels. I thought the way they blended the three of them together was fantastic.
And you make an excellent point about that. That's how comics work. And what we're forgetting sometimes is that these movies are based on comic universes and comic storytelling. And that's sort of what you're in. That's the ride you're in for. And I'm kind of, as I'm listening to this, it's, for me, it doesn't sound so much like Marvel fatigue. It sounds like Marvel has spoiled people to the point of expecting a certain level. I deal with this at home. You dole out the goodies for a certain amount of time, and all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I should pay the power bill, and then the kids revolt. It's so I kind of think that there's a little bit of that going on too. Marvel has set such a high bar. The expectations have because they ended up unexpectedly with Iron Man, kind of like sucking up this whole momentum of people that weren't as into comics, all of a sudden found it so accessible. It's like now they're taking it in so much, and it's so good. And then the buzz kind of wore off a little bit in the pandemic when you couldn't get it the same way. And then all of a sudden things have been this kind of disjointed way of trying to kind of reposition the timeline that they had set out 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, and also deliver the content amid a strike, amid polarizing everything. And so people just kind of go to war all of a sudden. I think it's kind of a starved and spoiled kind of population issue as well. And then as entertainers, it's like okay, the business gets kind of what's the, I don't know, the facade of it being entertainment, I guess, kind of the idea of it gets torn off in the public view. It becomes about money, and then you're really kind of having to defend the fact that no, this is art and stories, and no, come back and have fun and just watch it.
Like, we're having fun. We have fun discussing the story, and and where it lands the characters, and by no means are we alone in that. There are a great many millions of people who are still really enjoying the story. I think that it's a number of factors there, including even something else that was pointed out. The business world is changing. Streaming is a factor now, and a good number of people that I talked to about the theatrical release of this movie were Indeed, I'm going to wait until it comes out on Disney Plus in a couple months. Like, that's, and again, that's something that Bob Iger pointed out in his discussion there too. They've trained the audience to know that, if this one, if you're interested, then yeah, if you don't mind waiting a couple months, you're going to get it on your Disney Plus account. You don't have to go to the theater, and it takes now there's an elevated expectation of, look, something that really has to get you out into the theater has to be huge. It has to be huge. It has to be of certain caliber. And I think that's what he was trying to say to the audience, is that, we have to do movies in such a way that it gets people out of their house, knowing they're going to be getting this film in a couple of months on Disney Plus for no more than their subscription fee, which is a lot less, as he's pointing out, a lot less than taking your family to the theater in these particular economic times and stuff. So there's a lot of factors there, and I think those that have a bit of an agenda, it's pretty easy for them to say, see, MCU fatigue.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's true.
Yeah.
And thanks to Disney Plus, they jacked up the price for your membership again to get this. And
right.
I just, while we were talking, I looked this up. It said, movies can't hit streaming services until about 45 days after it's been released in theater. So for the Marvels to hit, and maybe this is a ploy for Disney to, ramp up the, because you've got What If coming season 2 on the 22nd right to the 29th. But it looks like if they wanted to, the Marvels could drop Christmas Day.
Wow. See, how fun would that be, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's like, so the Marvels being a very family fun, like it hits the audience in the full demographic spectrum. What a great movie to be able to access at Christmas, and what a great time to be talking about it now where we've got Christmas coming. Let's talk about some of the finer points of this film, because
what you expected.
it was not at all what I expected. It was absolutely, which I loved, because I guess one of the benefits of the promotional machine kind of being shut down is you only had a limited number of trailers to work with and speculate on. So I hadn't been subject to this whole, well, here's the movie as I see it kind of conversation that plays out, in the weeks before it. Like, somebody already has figured it out, like these sleuths that decide they're going to go from beginning to end. It's the only way it can go. And so, there was none of that. There was no, everything, right down to the musical number, which I was not expecting. Was right on the heels of having seen the Barbie movie. I was just like, this just makes sense. This just makes sense. This is and I actually think, I don't know if they aligned that idea, this goofy kind of, fourth wall nonsense. It was a lot of fun. Not at all what I expected, though.
What about you, Brent?
Well, I think that I think that they did a pretty good job when it comes right to trying to set the expectation that, okay, this isn't exactly what you might be expecting. This is not going to be Captain Marvel 2, where we see what happens. This isn't picking right up after the first Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah.
We get a lot of Carol's story in kind of flashback, little tiny bits. Granted, I think, that her story was back in the 90s, as far as this timeline goes, right? But, so I think they found themselves, okay, they've been doing this where they tell stories that are kind of current because they want to move their overall story forward. And this is what they've done. Now, I think some people who might have had the expectation, hey, we wanted to see Carol's story. Well, this is why they changed the name from Captain Marvel 2 to the Marvels. This is why they did that.
Right.
So that the audience would know, okay, something's a little bit different here, and to help get the expectations maybe aligned a little bit better with the story that they were choosing to tell. And now, again, it factors as to whether that worked or not. But this is a great bit of family fun, like you say. It's a fun story. It's pretty light. The story itself can be summed up in a couple of sentences. And you're just along for this little ride, but which brings these characters together to resolve some things and get you caught up.
Yep.
And then it's moved forward from here.
I think that's he touched on it right there. It's a lighter film, and I think that's a real positive, because especially when you're coming on the heels of Guardians and Ant-Man, where they had much darker tones for both of them, especially Guardians, right, with the rocket backstory.
Yeah, well, even Loki. I mean, as sort of triumphantly, he seized his kingdom. I guess it's still a pretty heavy and huge burden, and there was a lot of dark to it, as kind of zany and fun as it was too.
But think back to Carol's flashbacks, how dark if they had given us Captain Marvel 2,
how
dark that
it would have been another like space thing, and this kind of had a bit of everything. And I remember kind of remarking the first when I saw Spider-Man. The first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and there was these fight scenes that took place in broad daylight, and I was in full color, and I like just the color of it was amazing. Just watching Spider-Man fight the Green Goblin out in the sun, and just like they were colored in the and because it's always so dark and lots of explosions and stuff. And so the one thing I've always appreciated about when they go on the lighter side of things, they do this with Thor as well, is they use a lot more natural light and color. And I got a lot of that in this too, and it was just pleasant to watch.
Go outside and play.
So these, there's anxiety in a Guardians movie, especially the last one. And as much as fun as they are to watch, and you're kind of like teeth gritting for a while. This was just it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was like the second Wonder Woman movie, which was not the most fantastic movie, but it was fun. Wasn't it fun to watch? It was much like the Superman of that era. So I don't know. I'd go to be entertained, and I like to be surprised in the way that I'm entertained, as opposed to kind of having this linear way of making it too, which I think this was also a huge delivery mechanism for the final credit scene, which we can talk about in a little bit. But you've also going to have in these epic sagas, you have to have movies that, like Empire Strikes Back, that carry the plot to a certain point, so you're ready to pick it up at the next point, like the second Spider-Verse as well.
Well, Infinity War.
So you need these ones to move things along. I mean, the Kamala Khan is going to be a force going forward, right? Like, you needed to see her in action. You needed some opportunities to see her interact on a team, and same thing with.
But I like the fact that she's a teenager, and I like that they're really focusing. They put a lot of focus on that, especially that opening scene when they swap powers and she comes and she's Nick Fury, right? Is this an Avengers tryout?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, and again, I think that it was quite deliberate. They've got this lighter, fun tone, the palate cleanser from all the heaviness that has been in some of the recent movies, like you point out. 100% that they're doing that, deliberately and trying to entertain. And as it turns out, like my kids had a ball. Like when it came to the Flurkin kittens, that was, you could not have asked for a better. My kids were laughing out loud, and they just had so much fun in all those sequences. It's like, okay, that must have been a pretty good idea, because boy, that one really hit well for my crew.
When you went to see it, Brent, was there a lot of kids in the theater with you guys?
No, I did see it quite early, like opening weekend. And let's see, it was a pretty decent crowd, but there was, my kids were there, and there certainly were other kids there too. Not a lot of, I don't know that there was a lot of, it was a good mix crowd, I would say. But I didn't note that there was, look at all the kids. I did not note that.
I think a lot of people would have been concerned with that initially, because after that, you just saw people posting nothing but positive. Took the family, took the kids.
But
They loved it.
I think there was a miss there in billing this as a family movie. It's hard because Marvel wants to have this maintain this kind of, these are cool, slick, movies for for 40 to 50-year-old dudes, but they're not. But like, it's hard to market to family when you've got like this, like direct to. But to be able to do that, which they're still struggling to do that. You have Baby Groot, they have some things to offer on Disney Plus that is definitely to kind of not lure. That's terrible. Bring the kids in. But they oh man, that, I think, had they been able to find a way to market it as a kids movie, they did use the cats in some of the promo. There was one promo where it was all cats. I thought that was brilliant because the cats aren't SAG actors, so they can promote all they want.
Sure.
Yeah, that was I don't know if somebody just kind of had that as a wait a second, the cats, and they put that out there. I think if they had have found a way to maybe, because you're right. That's the part where I was like, I should have, I'm not should have brought my 9-year-old. So I'm going to do both. I went and I saw it in the theater, and I'll buy it on digital, and I'll watch it on Disney Plus, or the trifecta, I guess. So there you go, Bob Iger. There are some people like that do the whole, the whole gambit of purchase. Anyway, it's great. It's just, I think he could have packed those theaters with families, and it would have been a different thing. And maybe even, if that release had been pushed, this would have been a good holiday release. As much as we wanted it now, it probably would have worked out really well to kind of and get the bump of the end of the strikes. It might have just kind of been a bit of a boon to then be able to get right out there and target the marketing.
Which is so funny that you'd say that, because I remember seeing photos on the Thursday night they did the red carpet premiere of Captain Marvel, and you had all the producers and director there. Then the next day the strike ended. Yeah. And I'm like, you couldn't, and I agree 100%. You could have pushed that back, because really that was coming out right on the heels of Loki 2 wrapping up, and just, it felt like it was one sort of after the other. But looking at this movie now, Brent, I talking about the lighter side of it, they could go dark if they wanted to, or sort of heavier if they wanted to, if they were going to do a Captain Marvel 3. I'm assuming Brie Larson was signed for a 3-picture deal for the Captain Marvel character itself, because you've got all this fun stuff in here, but undertone it, you also get those meetings between the Kree and the Skrull where they're trying to negotiate this peace thing, and then she basically gets blamed for destroying the planet that the Skrull were on when she's trying to evacuate as many of them as possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's funny how there's not, like we say, we kind of, Carol is put in a positive context, in many scenes in this, lighter-hearted scenes, but really, we get the notion that at some point they're past. She promised, when she was on Earth at the end of the first Captain Marvel movie, she was saying that, I am, tell the Supreme Intelligence I'm coming, and your war, I'm coming to put a stop to, to this war. And so she was, not having it, but boy, did her taking things into her own hands and using her power for revenge and taking out the Supreme Intelligence, boy, did that have massive consequences.
Right? Yeah.
In such a negative way. Like, look, the whole society collapsed. Here's a society that has become, this AI, the Supreme Intelligence, is integral to their entire society and culture. And so, because the Supreme Intelligence harmed her or hurt her by, kind of doing the things that they did in the first Captain Marvel movie, when she comes and takes that out because she thought she had the moral high ground, and that they were doing something that they shouldn't have done, and she went and took action, boom, pre-Civil War, their planet's entire, biosphere and, collapses, and the cultures, and there's like the ramifications have have kept Carol away from coming back,
Yeah.
and they get to tell us that in the story. This is why Carol never came back, because she created a mess, a huge mess, and she was ashamed of the amount of harm that she caused by lashing out in her anger, and look at the impact that it had. And she was desperate to try to fix it before she came home, so she wouldn't have to come home with the shame of what she has done. That's heavy stuff.
Yeah,
It is. Yeah.
They managed to do it in a way though that it didn't
Subtle.
It certainly wasn't like this depression in the film. It was a lot of context, but it's a very interesting notion to a population that this is a villain, and the effects, the after effects, are Thanos level after effects, because there are other planets that were decimated as a result of the sort of correction, I guess, that these aggrieved were taking as they sort of hunted down Carol as well, to have her kind of ultimately pay for it. So it would be interesting to kind of explore, maybe in another conversation in 2024, some of these sort of moral high ground decisions that have been made along the way, and how that may have resulted in. I mean, look at Loki. Gosh, we pruned everything at one point. There's some definite ramifications on the moral high ground sort of decision of those kinds of things. So I'm interesting how those things kind of happen, but there's a real dark side to superheroes, like really.
One of the things, Brent, though, I noticed, and I don't know if you caught this, or I still get the sense that she doesn't know the full extent of her powers, Carol. And I think that was prevalent through all three of them, because they're sort of feeling each other out. Because there's one point where Monica looks at her and said, "You can fix this. You are the most powerful being that I know."
Right. That's an interesting question. Like, certainly she knows that she has extraordinary power because she absorbed whatever part of the Infinity Stone that was in that light speed engine. That all went into her. And so, she's got a bit of of an Infinity Stone that's powering her. And certainly she knows that she has extraordinary power, because she was not shy at all about coming to face Thanos and help out. And but perhaps there is some reservation there about her using her power, because her power, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Right, yeah,
there it is.
And she learned some really tough lessons when it comes to the use of the enormous power that she has. There's some reservation in some of the choices that she's making here.
We could do a whole show, several shows, looking back on all of these characters that we're encountering, and how each one has had to learn.
Well, look at the Hulk. His life is miserable. I mean, he's like the party pooper. He shows up and he destroys buildings, just kind of as part of what he does. There's all kinds of. I mean, we could talk, about the Battle of New York, and just people that had apartments there. That would be, or businesses. It's funny, but then you think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute, gosh, there could be, all kinds of collateral damage that's not considered, that and people, real human stories and real reasons. It's no secret. You see why, like how people that wield huge amounts of power, and destructive power at that, and use it to keep the peace, make enemies for life from populations that get impacted from it. There's a well, I didn't just make that up. It's not nuanced in there. It is. Yeah. Like I don't know.
The stories that you're talking about inspired the from us that view all of these stories in context with each other. The fallout of New York created all the Netflix series, and even the Disney Plus series, where we've got Kate Bishop. They touched on it directly. Her childhood,
Yeah. The
You know,
Avengers created the Vulture.
the Avengers. Well, yeah, the Avengers created a lot of this.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
A lot of these problems.
Yeah, right.
Just by trying to do the right thing, and that is the Marvel way, the feet of clay. That
Yeah,
notion that it's more. It's not just a black and white, good and evil. There's people trying to do the best and trying to do the right thing, but exploring the consequences of their actions as this is what makes all of these stories and so that they are of course hopeful, and they're trying not to lose that, and I think that they've done that in this movie where, like you said, like with Dar-Ben is the new as the new accuser,
yeah,
and she's like you exactly the type of character that you've described. She is really bent on revenge against Carol. They call her the Annihilator.
Hmm.
It is, and is that a hint?
Right.
To things that might be coming, certain Marvel series, certain Marvel characters, even.
I know, Brent, a lot of people look at the Dar-Ben character, and I've had a lot of people who've commented to me. They've loved the movie, loved everything about it. Their only real gripe was how much Dar-Ben looked like Ronan. And whether do you think that was purposely done to say that style of character is going to look similar?
Yeah, the accusers they have a similar look to them. That's the nature of the characters. So, that didn't bug me at all. I mean, she probably got a bit of short shrift because you have to absorb a lot about this character who's in relatively not a lot of the movie, or not a lot. We don't get much time with Dar-Ben to be invested in any sort of a way. So she becomes a little bit more of the one note villain, where you kind of understand. Okay, we get the story, which is good. She's trying to with revenge on Carol in mind, while she's making all these choices to try to rehabilitate her home world, Valhalla. Trying to take oceans, trying to take atmospheres, trying to take a sun, trying to take all these things that were destroyed on her world, trying to get them back, but she's trying to do them in a revenge way. So she's repeating Carol's mistake. She's, taking, she feels entitled because she's angry. And so she taking things from other cultures that are going to hurt Carol, and in order to try to bring her culture back. So the cycle continues of this of this sort of destructive cycle that they've got going on. But it all in the context of this, we get the notion of the quantum bands. And we get to tie that all together in a similar way to how the cosmic cube was merged together with an infinity stone. They did that story compacting of certain cosmic items that they became kind of infinity stones, and that allowed them to tell their stories a little more concisely instead of introducing a bunch of items. Well, they did the same thing here. The quantum bands are the same thing as the nega bands from the actual Captain Marvel comics. But that's you say quantum bands and it means things. It means certain characters. It has lots of hints. And I'll take a breath and let you guys say something.
Yeah, no, that's this is all. I love that. In a 1,000 years, when they're sifting through the ashes and they find somebody's Marvel collection, it's gonna become the parables, the things that teach the next the next civilization. That's the now the recorded the tellings of human and maybe alien foibles and shortfalls when it comes to judgment, I guess, and how it affects other people. There's all of these things that are coming in too, that This movie, this was particularly rich in it's like a chest of story building opportunities. So like
For a lot of people.
right, it's almost like the when you've got the those charts, it's like if then go to, it's like you've got like four places now that you can kind of spin off into and very convincingly, I guess, too. So I love that it did that, and I love the way that it introduced. It really gave a lot more. It's always cool to see a TV character move into the movies, right? When you see
Monica and Kamala.
Kamala Khan
Yeah.
and Monica, and I know it's Disney TV is it's technically not quite TV, it's TV with lots of money behind it, but at the same time it's like, okay, here we go, it's the big screen version, and they're really powerful characters. I'm really looking forward to see what happens to them next, and then what they've set Monica up for. First of all, Monica's powers should not be underestimated either. She
Are her powers then, Brent, of the occult nature, I guess? Because literally she got them thanks to a
hex.
certain witch.
I walked into a hex, like.
Well, look, where did Wanda's powers come from? Infinity Stones,
of course.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's all of this power is coming from Infinity Stones, and yeah. So the interesting thing about how Monica acquires her power through Wanda's power, and she comes in contact with that, and and it changes her. It actually changes her body to be in contact directly with this manifestation of Wanda's power. Now, look, what happens at the beginning of this movie too? She comes in contact with this manifestation of quantum band manifestations. Once again, it affects her. It impacts her physiology and physically, and then this is the notion that entangles all of them, because while Carol comes in contact with Darben's quantum band energy, and Kamala already has one of those quantum bands. They get entangled with each other, and the whole movie is just sort of a fun romp of them kind of popping back and forth with one another and trying to solve the problem through teamwork, because they are thrust into this team up, but the notion of the quantum bands becomes really important, and clearly where that they're going somewhere with this, and this is one of the main thrusts of the so we tell you this little adventure story, they get through it, but the important part here is that you got introduced to the notion of the quantum bands, that Darben was like, okay, I need this because this is going to help rehabilitate my society, but then when she finds it's connected to Kamala, and then Monica gets in there too. But by the end of this movie, we're seeing a second set of those quantum bands. So that's interesting too. So, there's all kinds of fallout from the quantum bands,
right?
And where that this could be going.
Is so for this phase, is quantum the new infinity then? Like, is it now quantum everything, quantum mania, quantum bands? Is that so that we were just it's still some sort of celestial, mystical, whatever influence, but now this is now what's taking the chair. Is it just an evolution of shiny things? Are we this is just going to teach people just to touch the glowing rock? That's what people are going to start doing from all of this. But I guess, is that what we're kind of getting at? We're moving into more of a quantum centric phase of the cinematic journey.
Well, yeah, I think so. They're taking advantage to put some of these MacGuffins, I don't know if they're fully qualified, but as on the table,
right? And
so because this is part of the comics. Yes, these are come from comic books. This is where this stuff comes from, and the thing is that these powerful items in this universe and in other universes, apparently, have effects on people, and these people become characters of interest, and we follow their story and how they affect them. So in a way, you really can trace how the Marvel story through these powerful items, that artifacts that exist, and how they've affected the lives of normal and then not so normal people as a result of coming in contact with them. And so the quantum bands and the characters that come out of that, we've been teased on a couple of things here that I'll point out here, but go ahead if you want to.
Before we get to that, can we just bring up one other side piece that from the movie before we talk about everything what led into all this? But Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, this is Sam Jackson's 15th MCU project out of 33 films.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Kind of like a Brent, like almost 50%, right? Like,
it felt natural just having him part of this, because I think because of his relationship with Carol and Monica, and just having come off Secret Invasion.
Yeah, you're right, and it's interesting how they've got Nick Fury on the table for story, but not a lot of his story is moved forward. In this, they don't focus on his story. They establish Sword. We know he's there. We knew he was there coming out of Secret Invasion, but this wasn't Nick Fury's story per se. He was sort of a non-player character to a degree. he was in the background. He was the one to kind of that the other characters bounce off of.
Yeah,
but really, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
we know it really tells us, okay, they've got Nick Fury on the chessboard here, but it's not his move yet. We're looking for the next movie.
Speaking of NPC, how fun would a Marvel's video game be where you have to do that switching? Where like play multiplayer, where you have to figure it out how you're going to swap powers and use that strategically and taking down big bads. Anyway, Activision, looking at you. Yeah.
So where do you? So if we bookmark Nick Fury here, Brent, do we see him down the road in the next little while, or is this going to be, like you said, it's not his time yet? But is he going to be sort of like Loki, where we said he's going to have that big pop-up moment at some point?
I believe, my guess would be, considering where Secret Invasion left, that we will see him in the next movie. My suspicion is that with the presidential situation that's going on, I think that the fallout of that is going to be directly into the Cap 4 movie in February. And I of 2025, not next year.
I was like, wait a second.
I was going to say I only have one movie next year, so
just
I want to talk to Brent
next
about that
year.
too. Yeah,
but so, in that following year, right? So will we see him? I guess I should qualify that. Deadpool is sort of an outlier. Deadpool's character is that we just don't really know how connected he is to any reality, let alone the one that they're trying to move us forward on the story. Will we see Nick Fury in Deadpool? I don't know that, or not. We could or couldn't. I don't know. But in the next stories that we know are directly filtering from Marvel Studios, Cap 4, Brave New World, I suspect that Nick Fury will be there, and we'll be seeing impacts, fallout from whatever's going on.
What are your thoughts about Armor Wars? Will he be in that one, you figure?
I suspect so.
Okay.
But depends on, we don't know when Armor Wars is falling. It's probably in 2026 right now.
Wow. So I don't want to bring this up, but Sam Jackson's no spring chicken.
He's even admitted that.
Right, and so I find even in the look at the Star Trek movies, and you're bringing the poor Patrick Stewart, and they just keep bringing him back, and I feel like there's going to come a point where you can't just you can't work him so hard. But I now Sam Jackson's listening to this, and he's probably not, yeah, yeah, he's probably very in very good shape. I don't mean to say that. I'm just thinking like a General Ross situation. We've got a lot invested in Sam Jackson's Nick Fury, so there's gonna have to, I would assume, have to come a point where either we're working with a variant of him, or his story ends.
You could do that, but I mean, the other thing we don't know is where Cap 4 was in terms of production when the pandemic hit. Right, so they could have already shot everything that's involving him.
Sure,
or they have. Who knows? Kevin Feige probably has a plan.
I'm not condemning him now. I don't know. Yeah, we only have to use stock footage of Nick Fury. he's probably got many years ahead of him in there, but there probably has to be a point where they're going to have to transition to what's her name there, Francesca, Elaine, or somebody else.
The Contessa. No, yeah. You know what? I think it's absolutely fair to acknowledge, Sam Jackson's age in this movie. You can tell he's getting he's becoming an older man, and I think that they are fully aware of all of that. The poor actors who are aging, and the fan base that loves and wants more of these characters. There's a disparity between those two tracks, and Secret Wars is fixing to be Marvel's solution for that.
Right.
And okay. I'm going to put this idea
here we go
out there. Yeah. Look, when the MCU started, there had been a comic book universe within Marvel that kind of rebooted things and gave it a bit of a gritty, more realistic feel that really did inform how they approached it with the Ultimate Universe. Right. Well, who was Nick Fury in the Ultimate Universe? Just by circumstances of the artist wanting to do something 100%. Crazy.
Yeah,
they drew Sam Jackson directly into the comics. And this all dovetailed into this interesting, and we've had a wonderful Sam Jackson, Nick Fury. But Sam Jackson, Nick Fury was not Nick Fury for many decades.
Yeah.
What happened to the classic Nick Fury from the comics that everyone for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, I'm thinking Anson Mount Nick Fury. That would be my look. If you had to go with another multiverse kind of spin on,
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be Anson Mount, but I think he'd be great.
You pluck a Nick Fury from another timeline, basically, is what it is.
Essentially that, and they've got their ability to do something and reintroduce all of this new excitement around this character that we've had for the last decades here, on screen. Now they get to have they get to do a Nick Fury that that might harken closer to what the comic version was, and they get to start all over again, have all kinds of fun, reestablishing a Nick Fury from this other universe, and they get have their cake and eat it too. Coming out of Secret Wars, where they get to kind of pick and choose, follow the storyline, and they can build a new universe and give themselves a chance to start fresh on a number of fronts, character-wise, including Nick Fury.
So this is the classic Brent sets off the chain reaction in my brain part of the show, and I am thinking of now this opportunity to start again with this other Nick Fury, because it really was this concept of this Nick Fury from the Ultimates that was the guy who visited at the end of these first Marvel movies that set this whole thing up. It was like what an interesting idea that it wasn't Nick Fury from this
The comics
universe at
world,
all.
yeah.
That it came in from a multiverse in the first place and spawned this whole MCU and there is in the other part where the other Nick Fury is a whole other set of Avengers and other actors that you can cast in it.
Or
Again,
a Nick Fury of a Young Avengers.
sure, but I mean, it's like, I don't know. See, this is what happens.
Isn't it interesting that we've had just in this film, we have had a peek
right
at another universe that has characters that harken directly to the comics, that are like, whoa, okay, we're seeing something here that suggests that there's a universe out there that has something that we're familiar with, or that there's quite different than what's going on in this universe. So they're playing, they're setting the stage for them to be able to do this sort of thing right away.
Well, this is so perfect segue. We've got about 3 minutes to go here, and we finally get to this because it was a whole lot of chatter about this end credit scene before I went in. I didn't get what it was going to be, the reveal, until we were in there and we saw it. But what we saw was another universe, presumably with the X-Men sort of flavor that we were familiar with.
That's right.
So what does this mean? Yeah.
This is so cool. This was the big buzz that everyone was so excited about with the film and what this means. Characters that they put on, and they did a nice job in this film setting up Carol and Monica talking, or Maria talking about who was supposed to win that race, and because Carol cheated, got there first and got to do the flight. But if that didn't happen in another universe, it would have been Maria Rambeau, who got the potentially the power and became Captain Marvel. So from the comic books, it's interesting. They call her. We have this rift in universe. We don't realize that it's a different universe. When Monica crosses and she sees what we were hinted at earlier. Oh, look, here's a universe where Maria did become Captain Marvel. And isn't it interesting? Because in Captain Marvel's story, or no, Ms. Marvel from the comics, yes, Carol's story, she becomes binary after she loses all of her power to Rogue. That thing that happens that's such an important part of Carol's story, which we don't know. Will they do that? Will they touch on it? But here we've got a world where binary isn't Carol. Binary is Maria. And she's working with the X-Men, just like Carol had done from the comics as binary. So we have this world where, and then with Kelsey Grammer's, classic voice coming in, blowing everybody away, because he's so perfect. Yeah. So perfect for Beast. And that was just a tremendous joy to see him. He references Charles Xavier. We see the X doors with this is X-Men stuff. Yep.
This is everything out of the X-Men movies we got initially.
This is some iteration of that. Yeah, there's links to all of this. Man, will we see some of that in Deadpool? Probably. But if we look at what Monica's wearing, or what Maria is wearing, she's wearing quantum bands. So that puts two sets of quantum bands on the table, which is really interesting because the Guardians of the Galaxy movie set up, amongst the other characters that were set up in this Young Avengers tease, which we can talk about in a second too here if we can fit it in. But Phyla Vel from the end credits scene of the Guardians movie. Her character is named Quasar. She inherits the quantum bands from Wendell Vaughn, who was the first Quasar character, but he has a bit of a tragic end coming out of the Annihilation. Hear that word? Annihilation event. And Phyla Vel becomes the next Quasar. Well, they just put her on the table, and they've teased a Young Avengers with Kamala starting to recruit Young Avengers. So the fun things that this teases, okay, the quantum bands could go to Phyla. She becomes Quasar for us, maybe in the not too distant future here. But that also suggests that, hey, maybe Kamala isn't going to be dependent on these quantum bands at some point to have her powers anymore. Once they get Reed Richards established with the Fantastic Four movie, and his stretching powers, then they're going to be in a better place, because they didn't want to. It's the whole reason why Kamala's powers were different. They were changed because they hadn't introduced. They don't want to steal the thunder out from under Reed,
right,
for the Fantastic Four movie introduction. So, is there a shift going on? Is this hinting that the quantum bands might get passed from Kamala to someone else because she doesn't need them anymore, and maybe she'll get more comic accurate powers at some point here? Teasing lots of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's end part one here, because we're gonna do another episode coming up here.
Chat here.
Where we're gonna wrap up 2023 with Brent.
Sure. Let's we'll table this one. And we'll put it all back on the table in the next chat. So look, that's the hour. We filled it. Congrats, I guess.
Stay tuned for our wrap up.
Stay tuned for our wrap up. One more episode to go in 2023, and as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week.